Welcome back to the second hour of the Thursday segment of the Liberty Lineup. This is the Naked Truth, where we think right and wrong, not right and left. With Ben McClintock and Enoch Moore from defendingutah.org. And in this hour, we'll be talking about the con of the con with Senator Andy Biggs from Arizona. What's a big deal about the Convention of States? Safe? Dangerous? Is it the real solution? We'd like to thank our show sponsor, EOS Mobile, the only cell phone service that gives you the peace of mind that your monthly bills are supporting only conservative candidates and causes. Call 877-367-7524. Isn't that interesting? You know, there's lots of others. All the other big companies out there are really just promoting the big government candidates. And we've got EOS Mobile supporting shows like this one that are helping to promote the cause of liberty. Be among the first 10 callers during the show today, and you'll get a special offer if you mention the Liberty Lineup radio show. Call now, 877-367-7524. That's 877-367-7524. Again, 877-367-7524. For more information, go to eoscell.com, eoscell.com. And we just had a killer hour, I think, talking about what nobody else is talking about on the radio. Where else, except for K-Talk and the Liberty Lineup, are you going to be hearing about the real story behind the vaccines?
You'll hear about the vaccines from KSL and Doug Wright.
Doug Wrong,
but he'll
give the propaganda.
He'll give you the propaganda.
And he's not going to be able to give you the tools to be able to find out for yourself. And so it's really I'm really glad that we have this opportunity to be able to talk to you about these things. And we talked about how we did a pre-recorded interview with Senator Andy Biggs from Arizona. He's actually the Senate president, and it's somebody that I've known for a long time. And I'm hoping that we can get that queued up and be able to play.
Yeah, it's working.
He's got this book called The Con of the Con. And it's a really good book that really lays out, and it's a good tool for you to use because he's a state legislator, and he can help you. And using that tool to be able to talk to other state legislators, I think it's really going to add a lot more weight. And so let's go ahead and play that interview. We've got, we've got a caller from the last hour topic. Let's just take it real quick.
All right.
And before we get into the Con of the Con by Andy Biggs. Levi, you're on the air talking about the hepatitis B. You're on the air with Ben McClintock and Enoch Moore of defendingutah.org.
Thank you, gentlemen. The American citizen has been groomed to accept all authority that comes his way, right down to poking your kids 10 minutes after they enter this wretched world. The lady shows up with the Hep B vaccine, and she just assumes you're going to take it because most people do. I asked her, What is my brand new perfect daughter need that? That's the prison Bubba shot. She's not a homosexual. She's not an IV user. She's not a drug addict. So why are you poking her full of that poison? She's not going to be a sewer inspector anytime soon. And like I said, probably not a deviant ever. So no on the prison Bubba shot. And then she looks at me and just goes away.
That's the response you need to give. We need to kind of really get on the offense with these. Too often we're really just like pretending like we're like subservient to them. But I liked your response, Levi. We've really got to, what newborn is needing that shot? It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. So let's go ahead and go to Senator Andy Biggs, author of The Con of the Con. Again, this is Ben McClintock with the Naked Truth segment of the Liberty Lineup. And on the line with us, we have Senator Andy Biggs from Arizona. And Andy is a author of the book, The Con of the Con. And just a little bit about Senator Biggs. He is a 7-term member of the Arizona State Legislature. and he is an Arizona native, and he earned his BA degree from BYU and was awarded a JD from the University of Arizona College of Law. Thanks. Appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, Ben. Good to be with you.
So what got you to want to write this book?
Well, I've opposed what I've called the con, others call it something else, but for many years. But over the last probably 4 or 5 years, I got so many pieces of correspondence from people from all over the country, mostly against my position in support of a con, and some of it rather antagonistic and some of it bewildered at my stupidity. I thought I really probably ought to put down on paper my ideas, my thoughts on this subject, and then maybe I could circulate it so I wouldn't get as much hate email as I got over that.
Gotcha. So I remember actually I'd paid attention to, and in the past you had, this is a topic that's not new. It comes up pretty regularly, and it's kind of, I don't know, been more in the news lately, or in the collective consciousness of conservatives and liberals on both sides. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of liberal organizations are backing this convention as well. And most people just think it's Mark Levin, but you've got George Soros-funded Wolfpack behind it as well. And I heard one of your testimonies I thought was really interesting to the state legislature when this was coming up for a vote there in Arizona. And you said something along the lines of that you don't even trust, as conservative as Arizona is thought of being, you don't even trust yourselves to this convention process. What did you mean by that? And I don't know if you remember saying that. But something along those lines.
Yeah, Ben, I remember very well saying it. It was on a floor debate in the state Senate, and the point I was trying to convey is you don't know. There's so much about this that you don't know, and we in the state legislature of Arizona, a very conservative state, have done some pretty wild things that most people looking at us would have said they never do. Let me give you an example. We a few years ago we expanded Obamacare, and we did that even though a majority of Republicans in both the House and the Senate opposed that. But a small group of Republicans bonded together with all the Democrats to form a coalition with the support of a Republican governor to override all of the objections of the majority of Republicans in both the House and the Senate to pass an Obamacare expansion. And that's exactly type 1 or example 1 when I say, I don't even trust us to do it.
Right.
To get together to open up the U.S. Constitution.
Exactly. I think that we can see that here in Utah as well. Last session, our legislature, which is mostly Republican, people think of as Utah as being conservative, passed one of the biggest increases on property taxes as well as the gas tax. And so even conservative states are acting unconservative in the traditional sense. They're promoting bigger government. And
yeah,
so it seems like, go ahead.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, so I understand the sentiment that says, well, we can trust the states, but the states have not been vigilant in a couple things. What you just mentioned, we haven't been vigilant in protecting the liberties of our citizens very well, and number 2, we have been failures in protecting state sovereignty from federal encroachment.
Right.
So when you take that kind of gasoline mixture to a potential convention that's self-governing, you have a chance for an explosion that will further actually encroach upon our liberties instead of further freeing us from the chains that are being held around us. Exactly.
And in the description of your book, I hope people will go to theconoftheconcon.com and pick up your book, because I think one of the points that a lot of people are missing that you point out is, well, what's the problem that we face? Kind of address that. Is the Constitution really the problem?
Yeah, that's one of the things I typically ask people is tell me what part of the Constitution has produced the problems that we have today. And most of them say, well, the Constitution is not a problem. It's the people we elect. Some of them who are study a little bit, they'll say, well, the Commerce Clause. And I say, do you think the Commerce Clause itself is bad, or the interpretation and application or misapplication of the Commerce Clause is bad? And they invariably agree that it's not the Constitution that is our problem. It is people who, that we elect who forget their duty to adhere to the Constitution or deliberately go around the Constitution, as we see in our chief executive, President Obama, today. It's not the Constitution. So why are you trying to tamper with or tinker with the Constitution? And that's a simple point that a lot of people forget to even consider.
Yeah. And so what about the response that they might give of, well, that's why it needs to be clarified. That's why we need an amendment to clarify it, and so we can fix any of the misinterpretations that are going around out there.
And I say, clarify how? I typically say, you guys, the idea for an amendment that has the most synergy is an idea of a balanced budget amendment. But you realize that there are dozens of proposals on different balanced budget amendments. So you can't even coalesce around this idea of balancing the federal budget, because all of these groups are fractured and have so many different ideas. So how do you really say that you're clarifying the Constitution?
Right. And when they come to that, and so when you come to the convention, I remember just a few months ago here in Utah, there was a meeting where they were discussing the rules, and they had of what a convention would actually have, the rules for the convention. And they were arguing about including God in it. And so if they're arguing about things like that, how are they ever going to be able to come to any liberty-minded solution? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, Ben, you're right on the money. I had friends who were attending it who, even though they disagree with me on this issue, they were highly frustrated because not only were they debating the God inclusion issue, they were debating whether you need a Democrat and a Republican co-chair. Do you need to have a Democrat and Republican vice chair? Do you need a man vice chair? Do you need a woman vice chair? It is.
They were talking even like transgendered or gay. Or
exactly.
Every different group represented.
Exactly, and it becomes this hodgepodge of strange ideas that are coming from people of goodwill. These are people of goodwill who are just, and they probably need to have.
We don't mean to interrupt Senator Biggs, but we got to take that break. This is Ben McClintock with Enoch Moore. We've been talking with Andy Biggs from the Senator of Arizona, who is the author of The Con of the Con. We'll be right back, talking more with more of that interview. Go to k-talk.com, where you'll find our calendar and events in the chat room. Go to K-Talk and post our Facebook page, K-Talk Utah.
Are you going to agree? Our freedoms are waning and we'll lose our liberty, slipping one by one until there's nothing left to see. Are you willing to stand with me? Are you just going to let it be? The ranchers are first, but brother, next it may be me. We all stand together or we'll hang separately. Are you going to the tree? Are you willing to be free? It won't get any easier to regain lost liberty. Strange things are happening in this land that once was free. So, brother, I ask you, are you going to stand by me?
was a really moving tribute that was sung by the daughters of the murdered rancher Lavoy Finicum, and you can listen to the song at your leisure at defendingutah.org. Go to our the top article that's there right now is Lavoy Finicum warns against wolves in sheep's clothing. It's our top article actually of all time right now, really going viral, spreading like wild. And you can listen to the song on that article at defendingutah.org. This is Ben McClintock with my co-host,
Enoch Moore
from defendingutah.org. We are back on K-Talk Radio, AM 630, k-talk.com with the Liberty Lineup Naked Truth segment where we think right and wrong, not right and left, sponsored by EOS Mobile, the cell phone service for conservatives. And we've been on we've been playing a pre-recorded interview with Arizona State Senator Andy Biggs on his book, The Con of the Con. So let's go ahead and play. We'll go back to the interview.
Of meetings like that, so they can see how off base things can truly get. I mean, it's just nutty, and they forget. And I reminded my friends who were there is anything you do in a meeting today is irrelevant at a convention. A constitutional convention called pursuant to Article 5, because that would be a self-governing convention. They establish their own rules. Right. So you can sit there today and say, oh, we got these rules and everything will be grand, but those rules would have to be adopted by that convention, and you have no idea who's even going to be the delegates. So how can you receive some kind of assurance that they're going to follow the rules that you're making up out of whole cloth today?
Right. And what's funny is that those people that would be delegates are saying, oh, this conservative guy in the legislature, he'll be the delegate. Well, these are the same guys that voted for those tax increases, for the increase in government regulations in different parts of the state. That's like even the most conservative guys there that on a best case scenario that we're in deep trouble.
Yeah, I agree, and people get mad at me for saying this, but I say, where's our James Madison? Where's our George Washington? Where's our Ben Franklin? Where's our Alexander Hamilton? And by the way, when Alexander Hamilton was there, one of the beautiful things about the original Constitutional Convention was the secrecy, because Alexander Hamilton came in and basically said, I like the British system. I think we should have a monarch. I think we should eliminate or get rid of states. You know what? If the public would have known that, they would have hung Alexander in effigy. But you can't do that today because everybody's going to be tweeting out anything you say. So the idea of a thoughtful, deliberative process is out the window. Out the window.
And what if they had it in secret like the original one as well? Do we have the people with the integrity to do the right thing in secret today?
Well, I don't think you're asking me that question, so I tell you my thought is no. I don't think so, and part of it would be the evidence that nothing would remain secret. Right. It would come out. I mean, in my legislative body in the state senate, before I was the Senate president, I sat across the table from a fellow Republican, so we would close a caucus now and then, which was supposed to be kind of a secret meeting to discuss legal issues or something. And he literally was tweeting out what we were discussing the whole time we were having our closed caucus, you know. And this goes on. This is what happens. So it's kind of a crazy idea by people who just perhaps haven't quite thought it through enough. And they think I'm crazy too. So I mean, it's all right. That's all right.
It's a mutual feeling.
Yeah, so, yeah, actually.
One of the major organizations on the so-called right is that's promoting it is the Convention of States, and I've noticed something that they have self-contradictory memes going around. One is they kind of debunk the runaway convention myth, saying that only one amendment can be proposed at a time. And then on another thing, they say they suggest, the Liberty Amendments, which is several, up to a dozen different amendments that they want to propose. So it's kind of like, which one is it?
Right. Great point. I actually have almost wherever I go and speak, if it's relating to the CONCON, there's somebody in the audience from the Convention of States that kind of follow me around. And the reality is they are contradictory, and moreover, they are misleading. Article 5 does not say anything that they say. So they'll stand up and they'll say Congress must issue a call and they can do no more than that. And so in a way they're correct. Yeah, Congress issues a call. But what they don't bother to tell anybody is that the content of that call is also determined by Congress. And so if you could look back at the only time in history where we've ever had a constitutional convention, what you'll find is that a very specific call was issued, date and time, with the prescribed actions that could be taken. Right. And one of the first things that they did was these people that I revere, I think they were inspired by God, but one of the first things they did was to disregard the call, which is why some of them said that they were leaving, and some left. Lansing, Yates, they left the convention because they said there's not the authority. There's no authority here to do this. We've exceeded the authority of the call, and that is a very common theme. But typically when I've debated folks from a convention of states, I will take out their mailers, because I have their mailers, and I'll read from their mailers, and I will say, can you tell me where in the Article 5 of the Constitution it says this? And they can't. They can't, right, because it's not there.
So how do they get away with doing that? Because most of their arguments aren't in Article 5. They say it has to do this and it has to do that, but it's not in Article 5. And when you bring it up to them, they they start calling you names.
Well, they call me names. That's okay. But the reality is, I think people of open-minded people who listen, and that's when you point this out and they don't respond, and they really won't. They will not answer those specific questions, because even though it's not in Article 5, it's what they wish to happen, and they believe somehow that if you wanted something to happen bad enough, it will happen. But I have found, frankly, just by pointing out the truth and taking Article 5 and taking the minutes of the original convention, taking apart all the material that they use, tends to persuade people that they should at least rethink this.
Right. It seems to me, maybe you can elaborate on this, is it's a call for a convention is a misdiagnosis of the problem, which you get into a little bit in your description of your book. And we talked about originally, it's a misdiagnosis of the problem. And so when is Article 5, when would be a good time for an Article 5?
And that's a great question, because I get asked that. So I'm going to tell you when a good time to do Article 5 is. We've used Article 5, but we've never used it where the states have successfully petitioned Congress for a convention. But we've used Article 5. That's where all the amendments are. But when it is good to do it is, and this is what I say, is when the states are being led by governors, supported by legislatures, who refuse to obey federal mandates and refuse federal dollars in order to separate themselves enough so they have restored some sense of state sovereignty. Because when that happens, and you have enough states that do it, frankly, you got to have the two-thirds states do it. When that happens, now you have assurances that the states will be looking out for the best interests of their citizens, and you're not going to get a runaway convention. You're going to get states that are coming together who are going to find ways to limit where the real problem is, where the diagnosed problem should be, and that is an overreaching by a federal government that's out of control. But as long as we're subservient and bowing to them, then it's a bad time to do it.
Right. That's a good point. It seems to me that if we're trying to change the Constitution that's already ignored, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Oh, Ben, you're exactly right. I mean, that's what they commonly say when I'm debating them. Is they will often say, "Well, we want to build these parchment barriers higher." I actually had, not from Convention of States, but from another group that came in my office. I asked a guy, and he's the leader of one of these groups, other than the Convention of States. But I said to him, let's assume that you get everything you want. You get a convention that works your way. They produce a balanced budget amendment. It doesn't get run away, and it goes back, and Congress is stuck. It's been ratified by the states. I asked him, what do you think happens? And he says Congress immediately tries to go around it.
Right there. Congress immediately tries to go around it. We've been talking with Andy Biggs, state senator, Senate president in the state of Arizona, author of the book The Con of the Con that you can pick up at on Barnes & Noble, or if you Google the book, you can find it online. Well, we wanted to break into it before the commercial break because we wanted to make some announcements. Somebody called in and we wanted to verify it, but they were saying that down in Kanab, getting ready for Lavoy Finicum's funeral tomorrow, there's a report that perhaps there is a FBI presence there. There's been rumors, and so we've been trying to verify that, but we don't know that right now. But what we do know, and this is really good, the sheriff of Kane County.
They already told the FBI not to come.
Yeah, so the sheriff has already warned them. So he's a constitutional sheriff, and he told them that if they came, he told them not to come. So it's something that
it's
he
minimal.
understands.
That's what we know so far.
That's what we know so far. And so
that
if they are there, that'll be
Sheriff Tracy Glover
of Kane County there in Kanab.
And that's all Dave Ward in Oregon had to do from the very beginning.
But we know that he was a part of something else.
Yeah.
But tomorrow at 5:30, there's a workshop that we want to let you know there. If you're going down to Kanab to the funeral for Lavoy Finicum at 5:30 at the I'm trying to find I'm getting a text from another co-host, Cheryl Neger,
who's on site down there.
Victoria Sharp is going to speak, and she was one of the eyewitnesses in the car, and she and her family are going to perform the songs that we played earlier, and they never got to perform in Oregon. It's going to be...
I think it's a different song. But
it's a different song. It's going to be a benefit concert, and that's tomorrow at 5:30 there at the middle school there in Kanab.
And that's the same one with Jordan Page. He'll be there.
Jordan Page will be there. If you haven't heard his songs, you look him up. Look up Jordan Page Liberty on YouTube. So as we go to the break, we'll be playing that song again from the Daughters of Lavoy Finicum. This is Ben McClintock and Enoch Moore from defendingutah.org, and this is The Naked Truth, where we think right and wrong, not right and left. And we'll be right back talking again with Andy Biggs, state senator, author of The Con of the Con.
Are you going to agree? Our freedoms are waning and we'll lose our liberty, slipping one by one until there's nothing left to see. Are you willing to stand with me? Are you just going to let it be? The ranchers are first, but brother, next it may be me. We all stand together or we'll hang separately. Are you going to the tree? Are you willing to be free? It won't get any easier to regain lost liberty. Strange things are happening in this land that once was free. So, brother, I ask you, are you going to stand by me? Are you going to agree? Our freedoms are waning and we'll lose our liberty, slipping one by one until there's nothing left to see. Are you willing to stand with me? Are you just going to let it be? The ranchers are first, but brother, next it may be me. We all stand together or we'll hang separately. Are you going to the tree? Are you willing to be free? It won't get any easier to regain lost liberty. Strange things are happening. Are you going to agree? Our freedoms are waning and we'll lose our liberty. Slipping one by one until there's nothing left to see. Are you willing to stand with me? Are you just going to let it be? The ranchers are first, but brother, next it may be me. We all stand together or we'll hang separately. Are you going to the tree? Are you willing to be free? It won't get any easier to regain lost liberty. Strange things are happening in this land that once was free. So, brother, I ask you, are you going to stand by me?
Again, that is the daughters of Lavoy Finicum, murdered by state and federal agents last week. And this is Ben McClintock with Enoch Moore from defendingutah.org. We are on K-Talk Radio, AM 630, k-talk.com with the Liberty Lineup Naked Truth segment where we think right and wrong, not right and left. Sponsored by EOS Mobile, the cell phone service for conservatives. And before we get back to our interview with Arizona State Senator Andy Biggs, the author of The Con of the Con, we wanted to let you know about the book by Lavoy Finicum called Only by Blood and Suffering, Regaining Lost Freedom. Again, the name of Lavoy Finicum's book is Only by Blood and Suffering, Regaining Lost Freedom.
And 100% of the proceeds of the sale of that book go to the family and the
Lavoy's wife and his family, and for covering, of course, the costs involved now with not only the funeral but with the family, just family activities.
13 kids and 50 fostered kids.
And as well as investigation that they're going to have to do into his death. Because I guarantee you that any government investigation is going to
will give us the same of what we already got.
It's kind of like like we talked about earlier with the vaccinations. It's like a pharmaceutical company study on vaccines,
or the line. We investigated ourselves and found we did nothing wrong.
We did nothing wrong, exactly. Right. So they're going to need that. So go on Amazon, go online and pick up Only by Blood and Suffering, Regaining Lost Freedom by Lavoy Finicum. So go ahead and play the rest of our interview with Senator Andy Biggs, author of The Con of the Con, and state senator from Arizona.
That's right.
Exactly.
Congress will immediately try to go around it because they're the problem. And if our elected officials are the problem, guess who really? You can't say that we the people are the government. And then when government runs amok, say it's government's problem. We, the people, elect these folks. If we don't like what we get, we have to elect better people. And we have to keep doing that until we get the people in there that will respect the constitutional obligation. And we don't have that. I mean, we just really simply don't have that. And I mean, take a look at what happened with Mitch McConnell and John Boehner, who were challenged and looked like they were going to be unelected, and then they got back, and what did they do? They immediately caved on everything.
Yeah.
That's after they were put back in by conservatives who were hoping that they would have found themselves a conservative spine. So
Right. Doing the right thing. And so it
Right.
seems to me that the convention is for when the Constitution is being followed, but there's still problems. But that's not what I think that's universally agreed. That's not the situation we find ourselves in. And so now what we need to do is use the 10th Amendment as the enforcement mechanism, wouldn't you say?
yeah, I think that's right. I mean, you need to move from Article 5 and into the 10th Amendment, and that's what I'm talking about, where states begin again to assert their sovereign interest. That's really what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So we've got Hawaii and other states proposing amendments to make Obamacare a part of the Constitution, others to repeal basically the First Amendment, which what was that? That would take money out of politics, they say, which is what the Wolfpack and George Soros is working on with the Article 5. So you've got the liberal parts of it. So we know that the liberals are working hard for a convention as well. And so with these two voices, battling each other, where you've got the liberals and then you've got the conservatives that aren't really conservatives, they're still battling for bigger and bigger government. What do you think best case scenario would we expect out of the convention?
Well, what I would see as a best case scenario is that you'd have a stalemate. That would, if I saw a convention happening today, I'd be praying that they came out of there with a stalemate with no proposed amendments. That really would be your best outcome because like you say, you've accurately diagnosed this thing where you've got people on both sides, you've got people in the grand middle, and there's going to be certainly some proposals that I would find to be anathema to freedom and liberty. And since that's the case, then in my opinion, the best thing you get out of this would be stasis. And if that's what you get, then I'd be shouting from the rooftops. But
as bad as that sounds, the status quo is not what we want, of course.
Exactly. That's right. But if that's going to be your best outcome due to the environment in which we are living today, then a better solution is to not run the risk of doing more than the status quo in that sense.
What would be the most likely outcome, do you think?
The most likely outcome is you're going to see some nibbles and cuts around the edges that do things that probably I don't want to speak for you, but for me, I would look at them and everything from what I would call social justice type issues coming to the forefront in some kind of compromise. So, for instance, maybe you see an indexed federal minimum wage. Maybe you see mandatory sick leave. These things that are real populist in idea, and yet when you step back and take a look, you'd say, hey, that's contrary to the purpose of the Constitution and liberty. And then on the other side, they might get something which has a triggering tax increase upon a failure to balance the budget. So that's probably a fairly likely outcome there. I'm not sure that you see. Well, I don't know. We just saw 50% of Iowa Democrats vote for an avowed socialist. I mean, it's one thing to have a closet socialist or a quasi out of the closet socialist, and then quite another to have some guy who has said his whole adult life he's a socialist. I mean, that's when you watch that Iowa voted in that way. I kind of think maybe we've reached that tipping point where if you have a convention, you're going to have open and notorious socialism come out. Maybe you do get some of those socialist programs sent back to the states for ratification. Right.
So what do you think of the chances are? Do you think they would keep the rule that's in the article that's in the Constitution now of that three-fourths majority, the 38 states, or do you think they would do what the original convention people did and change the rules there?
Well, I have pointed that out to people before, and they say, "Oh, that just can't happen." Well, it has. There is a precedence for that, by the way. I do think that I would not be surprised if they tried to adjust that number, but I think that would be perhaps a bridge too far. Even I would hope so, anyway.
Do you think that the states would then? So some of the things. What is the likelihood of the states ratifying those amendments?
Well, until a few years ago, I would have said highly unlikely, but today I would say that there's a substantial likelihood that if you're doing what I call on-the-edge social justice programs, I think it would not surprise me if those were ratified by the states.
And we've got, even in our own state of Utah, we've got a state legislator that actually was promoting Medicaid expansion, and he was kind of using these same tactics of Karl Marx, where in the Communist Manifesto he talks about how we have to do things one step at a time. And our state senator, Alan Christensen, said that we had to do the same thing with Obamacare expansion because we're debating that in Utah. And so you've got Republicans that are saying we've got to use the same tactics to bring us Obamacare expansion. We've got to do things one step at a time. Is that a likely situation with an amendment process, do you think?
Well, I think, I'll say it this way, and I think James Madison was concerned about this too, is that if you do it once, it would become easier to have more frequent amending conventions. So I think that I don't know that they would do it incrementalism by design, but in the end, it seems to me that once you do it one time, don't be surprised if you start seeing them with some more frequency.
Maybe a more common process.
Yeah.
And with the idea of we did it once and we just keep doing it over and over again.
Well, yeah. I mean, once the monkey knows how to get the coconut out of the bucket, he'll do that again and again and again. And so that's really kind of right now they're struggling to figure out how to get it done. But then once they get it done, it would happen with some frequency. You're right, I think.
You mentioned the balanced budget amendment as being one of the most popular ones. Something that I've looked into is that all but one state in the country has already a balanced budget type of amendment stipulated in their own state constitutions. But only one state actually has a balanced budget.
Ben, that is a fantastic point, and I've raised that in discussions with some of the balanced budget folks before, and in fact, one group that was here, I said, "Can I see the language for your proposed balanced budget amendment?" They said, "Well, we don't have it. We think it'll be written at the convention." And I said, "What's your pattern?" They said, "Well, we're going to have the states." And I said, "Well, you realize that all the states have a different version of their balanced budget requirement, and once you do that, every state now knows how to get around their own specific balanced budget provision."
Right.
And so Arizona has a balanced as a requirement for a balanced budget, and if you don't balance the budget, you're supposed to immediately come in and either raise taxes or make cuts in spending.
Right.
Well, for the first time in 8 years, Arizona's going to have a balanced budget, but again, that's the first time in 8 years.
I remember a few years back you were contemplating selling the Capitol building or something along those lines.
Well, it was done. I voted no on it, but it happened, and so we owe $1 billion on our state buildings. We didn't do the actual Capitol, but the Capitol, everything in the Capitol complex except for one or two buildings, went with all these other buildings around the state, and they're mortgaged for $1 billion.
So even though you're technically balanced the budget, you're still in debt. So it doesn't.
Oh,
you're still,
oh yes, yeah. Don't get me wrong. We have $2.3 billion in debt, but for the first time in 8 years, we will not be spending more money than we're bringing in. That's what I mean by balanced.
Right.
That's what I mean by balanced.
And so people, I think they get the wrong idea when you think of a balanced budget amendment that we're not in debt anymore. I think that's a false idea some people have as well.
Well, yeah, and actually, here's a way to think of it too. So they're not thinking of debt, and then they also forget that there's really two kinds of balances. You have a cash balance and a structural balance. So there are times that you have a lot of money in your checking account, but all of it is committed. Either that or it's one-time money. And like we did, we swept it from other funds within the state to make it appear like we had more cash than we really have, right? So that's there's accounting gimmicks, and that's what I'm saying. When every state knows how to get around their balanced budget amendment, there are mechanisms and accounting gimmicks that allow you to do that. But in Arizona, so we have a debt, but we're out of our deficit, and while that's huge, it's not as exactly where we need to be yet.
So if all these gimmicks, I mean, it really just ends up being a gimmick. And so I think the people that are putting forward the idea of these Article 5 conventions, I don't see how they couldn't know this. And so what do they, I mean, is there something else that they want to have happen at the convention that would be a bigger danger?
I can't ascribe their motives. I don't know why they, if they have some other ulterior motive. I just look at it and I say, you really need to acknowledge the difficulties that you have in doing a straight up balanced budget amendment.
Right.
And because Congress has an insatiable appetite to spend. There's a spending, what I call the spending lobby. They want to get government dollars, and so they've got lobbyists that come in and try to get that spending and up, and they try to get the government money, and they're very clever people. They're very clever people, very smart, and they can find ways to move around manipulate language that you have in certain ways to accomplish their ideas.
Right. So in Arizona, for example, you talked about how for the first time in 8 years, even though you're required to have a balanced budget, this will be the first time in 8 years that you've had one. So obviously it wasn't the requirement that got you to do it. Otherwise, you would have been doing it before. What got you to do it this time?
Well, in my role as the president of the Senate, I've been pushing in the direction of a balanced budget for the last 4 years. And our current governor came in and he campaigned on the idea that he wanted to get the budget balanced. We actually thought we were going to have a deficit this year, and we just put the brakes on spending. That's what we did. We put the brakes on spending, and the howls were loud and long. And now that we have reached a balanced budget, everybody wants us to come in and spend a mess of money again. That's the spending lobby.
So it obviously it wasn't the words that made you do it. You guys just decided to do it.
Well, right, but for me, in fact, I ran 14 years ago because the budget was problematic. But for me, the words mean something. The Constitution means something. Right. And so that's one of the goals.
But it didn't
I
mean enough
stated.
for enough people in the legislature.
Yeah, because at that point, even though we mortgaged buildings, even though the voters voted to raise a tax on themselves, and we cut $2 billion in spending in about a year and a half. We made huge cuts, but if you wanted to get down to what our true revenue level was, you'd have had to make about $4 billion in cuts, and people just didn't want to go that far, by and large.
But I think nationally speaking, with this BBA, if the Congress obeyed the Constitution, you wouldn't need a BBA because they would limit their spending to what they're authorized to do in the first place.
Well, yeah. So let's just be frank about this. The federal Constitution is meant to be limit the federal government's powers. It's a constitution of enumerated powers. It means you can list them, you can number them, you can count them, you can say what they are.
Right.
And it has been twisted and distorted and expanded so far out of shape that that's why we're out of whack spending wise.
Right.
And the question now is, how are you going to get yourselves back? And it will require if we were going to do that, if we were going to just get back in shape, it would require a pain. It would require sacrifice for a period of time until we righted the ship federally.
Right.
That's just the way it is. Either that or because if you start taxing to try to get $22 trillion a year, which is the problem. Because
right.
what you've got is you have to realize that we're spending over $1 trillion a year more than we bring in revenue. More than $1 trillion a year at the federal level than we bring in revenue.
Right.
And you and I we're not even discussing unfunded liabilities. We're just talking about the profit loss statement.
Right. And so when you break it down like that, it's clear that a BBA isn't going to be followed, or otherwise they could do, because they could do it now. If everybody in Congress decided to follow the Constitution, we could do it now. But like you said, there'd be howling, like you guys had there in Arizona. And so do we really think that a BBA is really going to work without them trying to manipulate it?
Right. No, that's the question, and I have to say I'm quite skeptical that any kind of parchment barrier is going to affect that.
It's already been ignored now. I mean, why do it again?
Exactly.
Well, I'd like to thank you again. Everybody should go to theconoftheconcon.com and pick up the book by Senator Andy Biggs, and you can get it there, or you can get it on Amazon. As we say goodbye, is there any kind of final things you'd like our listeners to hear or to do to be able to help others understand this?
I would like them to do two things. I think they should go to their own legislators, and in your audience in Utah, I believe Utah has already passed this, but they can pull out of any of these compacts or petitions and withdraw their petition for a CONCON at this time. That's what I think they should do. And if they need ammunition to cite to their legislator, go pick up my book at theconoftheconcon.com, because it really does make my arguments and my points. And you know, those two things are the specific things, but the more general things you need to do is be active, be involved, be listening to people who are providing you with true information, and measure it and weigh it, and then participate with vigor and gusto.
I think this is a good tool that everybody should use, is this book by you, Senator Andy Biggs, The Con of the CONCON, because you're a state legislator. And so coming from a fellow state legislator, I hope it'll make maybe a deeper impact on our state legislators.
I hope so. That's why I wrote the book.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Ben. It was great being with you. Good talking to you.
So that was Senator Andy Biggs again, the author of The Con of the CONCON. And being a state senator, especially the president of the state senate there in Arizona, I'd really recommend you get the book, The Con of the CONCON, and share that with your legislator, and urge them to work for the repeal of the BBA, call for a convention, as well as urging them to stop any future calls for a convention of states, because it's really just a scam. It's a misdiagnosis of the problem, and it'd be like you having cancer, and so brain cancer, and so the doctor gives you the solution is aspirin. It's really not going to work, and so it's something that we need to make sure that we understand. This weekend, again, is tomorrow. We've got Lavoy Finicum's funeral down in St. George. Down in Kanab. And so we want people to be able to know about his book, Only by Blood and Suffering, Regaining Lost Freedom by Lavoy Finicum. You can buy it on Amazon. Go to EOCell. This has been McClintock with the Liberty Lineup, The Naked Truth. Go to EOSCELL.com for more information and mention the Liberty Lineup radio show. Tomorrow, be sure and tune in to the Hollywood Y Guy. See you next week.
Are you going to agree? Our freedoms are waning and we'll lose our liberty. Slipping one by one until there's nothing left to see. Are you willing to stand with me? Are you just going to let it be? The ranchers are first, but brother, next it may be me. We all stand together or we'll hang separately. Are you going to the tree? Are you willing to be free? It won't get any easier to regain lost liberty. Strange things are happening in this land that once was free. So, brother, I ask you, are you going to stand by me?